to a special meeting on Wednesday, April 21st, 2021 of the, and I think we just, okay.
Oh, there we go.
That's a little better, Jason. Thank you. Mrs. Nye, could you please do our roll call?
Yes. Barb Marsden.
Here.
Jason Olive.
Here.
Laura Bruner.
Here.
Lindsay Love.
Here.
Joel Worth.
Here.
Thank you. We do have the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't have a flag here at my home, but for those who do have I guess we should say Pledge of Allegiance. I will go ahead and rise, and please join me if you can.
takes. We know that some of you will be very frustrated and angry and disappointed and upset. I would like to read through 3 options that we created based on the input. We wanted to demonstrate to the community, the parents and staff that have sent us emails, that we got your message and the rationale some of the rationale you were using for your position. And then I will turn it over to the board for their discussion. So we gleaned 3 options basically. To maintain the current mask mandate. And as Mr. Locke said, all the rationale was very passionate. First of all, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, the Arizona Department of Health, and the Maricopa County Health Departments recommend masks everywhere, including schools. These guidelines haven't changed, even in the current environment. A number of families and staff returned to in-person learning with the understanding that masks were going to be required. Masking is one of 6 mitigation strategies. It complies with the health agencies, and apparently, well, they appear certainly to be working. There are 5 weeks left in school. Why change now? Continuing the mask requirement maintains consistency for both staff and students, and it was shared with us that there's been a number of changes in school, out of school, virtual, online. So there was a degree of frustration as why would we change course now? It was shared that a change at this time is premature. Why not finish the year in the direction we're going? Not every student or staff have had the opportunity to get the vaccine. Vaccines are not available for children under 16 at this point, so families were expressing that concern. The cases in CUSD based upon the county dashboard are still in the substantial range. Many of you offered that. And many of you pleaded with us to maintain the most cautious approach by keeping all the mitigation strategies in place as they are now. So again, people that were requesting that we maintain the current mask mandate were very passionate. Then we have those that really make the masks optional for staff and students. Again, their reasons and rationale were equally passionate. Most vocal probably was the governor has rescinded his executive order requiring masks. Making masks optional allows parents to make an individualized decision for their children based upon their child's needs. And many of you said, be the district of choice you claim to be and let parents choose. Cases on the CUSD dashboard are minimal. Masking is one of 6 mitigation strategies. The other 5 remain in place. The school district does not require vaccinations, so why are you going to require masks? Many of you shared that many businesses and community venues, the churches, the parks, the stores, the malls, the grocery, have made masks optional. Therefore, students are not required to wear a mask in other arenas. So they have to come to school. Why make them wear a mask there? A number of students have experienced negative effects from masks. As the parents shared with us some pictures and made your case very passionately. It's difficult for teachers and parents to enforce wearing masks properly. And many of you cited that the masks aren't worn properly, so why wear them? And with the decision at state and local levels not to require masks, it will be even more difficult and potentially confrontational for administrators and teachers to enforce masking, since the community has lifted their mask requirements. So it's maintain the current mask mandate or make masks optional for staff and students. We had other requests, and some said Why can't our elementary schools and high schools and junior highs, why can't they make the masks optional when they're outdoors and require masks when indoors? And a number of you wrote suggestions such as that, a compromise of sorts. The rationale, the risk of transmission indoors is higher than outdoors, provides more mask breaks for students when they are walking outside or in between classes or recesses, what have you. It's easier to meet social distancing requirements when outside, allows for a gradual transition to an optional mask protocol here in the district by starting gradually. And the cases on the CUSD dashboard are minimal. So, Madam President, members of the board, these are just 3 things we gleaned from reading all your emails, and I know you've read them and probably have your own ideas, but we see as 3 options. Currently, maintain the current mask mandate, make masks optional for staff and students, or something in between as a 3rd option. Madam President, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Camille. So since this is a discussion section of our meeting at this point, I would like to kind of get thoughts, some thoughts from the board members, and kind of figure out what everybody's thinking. So would anyone like to start?
Sure, I could start. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So I tried to read as many of these comments as possible. I got most of the way through all my email, and the overwhelming majority of the folks that I saw that wanted to get rid of masks, a lot of them used the same language that we've seen before back in the 70s and 80s when everybody wanted to have the right to smoke inside. It was kind of the same thing. If you want to smoke, it's a public health thing. It's your choice. But if you want to smoke around other people and be indoors, you're endangering other people's health. And a lot of the language around what they were saying was, it's my right, it's, a liberty, it's the government telling me what to do kind of thing. And that's all rationale that we saw with people wanting to smoke inside, smoke in hospitals, smoke in banks, whatever. And also it's a pretty apt comparison, because if you're doing something that's your own health decision, it's also something that's affecting somebody else's health. You can't exactly have a no smoking section in the classroom, or can't exactly have a no mask section in a classroom. It's my observation of the things that I saw coming over the email and coming in the comments.
Thank you. Does anyone else? Laura, maybe?
Yeah, I would agree with Mr. Olive, as well as just point out that we have mentioned before that we wouldn't make changes to the mitigation strategies when people were not able to change their choice for their children's placement, whether that be through COA or through in-person instruction. And I guess that is my other concern, that many folks communicated that, you kind of made this promise, and their children would have no option at this point if they felt it was unsafe for their family to have them come to school with other students who have their masks off.
Thank you. I saw a lot of comments like that to myself, Mrs. Brunner, and since this is not being done at a quarter or at the end of the year, it would create a significant burden for some of those families. So, Ms. Love, do you have anything that you'd like to say?
Yes, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Perfect. I mean, what else is there left to say? I do agree with Mrs. Bruner and Mr. Olive, and with what you received as well, Mrs. Mosden. And we did make a promise to parents when we opened up that we would maintain this mask policy. And my heart breaks reading the email from students and parents who have children that they sent back that have some kind of like significant medical issue and felt safe going back because we promised that we would maintain masks. And now they're kind of left in limbo, and it's created a lot of anxiety. So that's a lot of what I've seen, and it just doesn't seem fair that we change course with 5 weeks left in the school year.
Mr. Worth, did you have any comments that you would like to make?
Just briefly, Jason made a very good point. Now the question comes down to what are the various options we might want to look at. So I'll consider that when we make our motions.
Do you have any other thoughts on the whole process or the whole situation, mask situation?
Well, it's going to start to get complicated and related to how it impacts what I'm going to suggest. But to me, we should be able to do something different at the elementary level than we do necessarily at the secondary level. And that's what will be one of my suggestions during the discussion period of a motion. So.
Okay. I guess I do have a couple of other comments too myself, that even though the governor, some people believe that in some of the emails that I had, that since the governor had lifted the mandate, that it meant we needed to remove our mask mandate. But that is, he did allow for the fact that political subdivisions can make rules for their buildings, such as cities can make rules for their city halls and police stations and things like that. And we are, as a school district, considered a political subdivision. So we are still allowed to keep the rules and make the requirements in our buildings that we feel are necessary. My concern is that we have never, when we initially initiated masks and open schools back in September, had specific strategies in place. And the numbers at that time were the lowest that we have seen in basically since the pandemic had started, during that September and October timeframe. We've never gotten back down to that low level since then. And our cases are creeping up. Although we have the smallest number of cases that we've seen in the schools in a long time. Through my data that I've looked at, the number of daily cases in the zip codes that Chandler Unified School District serves have also inched up. And over the last few weeks, we are in the substantial category, and I have trouble saying that the data justifies us being able to remove masks and say people shouldn't be utilizing masks in our schools. I think some of the most important things of the school year are coming up. The IB and AP tests that our high school students take, graduation, even just the finals that everyone takes. And I would hate to have having someone sitting next to someone who is very scared of someone not wearing a mask, to have that disrupt their ability to concentrate and take an exam properly. those are some of my thoughts on this. But I also totally agree with Jason, and I think you're absolutely right to go back to the historical, I guess, precedent that we have looked at with the smoking, and that's a really good point. So, I guess, does anyone have anything else that they would like to add? Yes, Jason, Mr. Olive.
So we should probably talk about if we want to let folks, let kids go on the playground and take a mask off if they're out doing things on the playground outside. That would make sense. If they're distance, that doesn't seem like it would harm anything. What do you guys think?
Sure, I'm fine with that.
I'm sorry. Mr. Worth, do you want to say something?
Based on what Jason said, I believe you want to have a discussion on that, right? And Barb, you're breaking up quite a bit, to be honest with you.
That's interesting. Be my internet. Does anyone want to talk about kids on the playgrounds, and especially with the warming up weather?
So I do have questions about that, and this might be a question for Dr. Castile, because I know that she has talked to some folks at the Arizona Department of Health. But what does this look like when kids aren't wearing masks at recess? Like, does play have to change? Like, is there an aspect of social distancing that we have to look at? I'm not totally comfortable with it because I don't know what the public health opinion is on it.
I was told that the outdoor play and activities, they would support that without masking, being outside.
Are there any changes that we would have to make, or any mitigations that we would have to factor in addition to removed masks for outside?
I don't believe so. Mr. Narducci, are you aware of any? You read that document as well.
Dr. Castillo, under the current executive orders, there's limited mitigation in outdoor facilities that need to accompany. When the first directions came out from our health departments, they were considering PE to be a classroom and wanted the mitigation to be the 6 feet, just as any other place would be. But when they did stress physical activity outdoors and the air being able to be refreshed and to be outside, we had been told that those could be mitigated by the district just by moving those forward. So I don't know of any restrictions at this time.
Thank you.
I'll personally just anecdotally say myself that climbing 3 flights of stairs, outdoor stairs, in 90-degree heat is really tough. I'm a little older than the kids, but I can truly appreciate that when they're running around and jumping and climbing and perhaps even doing a running club after school, that this would be, it's difficult. And much more frequent breaks need to be taken because it is that difficult. Dr. Castillo or Mr. Narducci, we still are sanitizing our play equipment and continuing with those type mitigation strategies, correct?
Yes.
Yes, and important to note that all the other 5 mitigation strategies, along with quarantining, has not changed. We still have the same requirements by county health as well as by Arizona State Department of Health. We have to abide by those, and those were not released in the executive order as well.
Barb, Madam President, when you're.
Yes, Mr. Worth.
So, one of the things I'd like the board to consider is Remember, our elementary kids, based on the science, are at very little risk. But those parents that are concerned about that could have their students at that level wear masks. The other thing I like at the elementary level, peer pressure is not really an issue related to mask. I realize it is at the secondary level. So again, at the elementary level, science says very little risk. If parents are concerned, they can wear a mask. So I'd like you to consider that as we go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Worth. Mrs. Brunner, did you have anything comment about outdoor or elementary?
Certainly, we can understand that it is much more difficult when you're exercising to breathe with a mask, for sure, especially in the heat. I guess my only concern is how do we maintain the 3 feet outside? Did we get feedback from teachers that this would actually be practical for them to monitor during recess or PE, to be able to make sure no one's, because to be honest, I'm not as concerned about the surfaces. The research doesn't really show that the surfaces are as big of a concern, especially when it's outside, since sunlight on playground surfaces tends to get killed in 7 minutes by the sun. But I am more concerned about, a kid being 1 foot away from another kid and yelling in their face, because anyone who's been on a playground before knows that happens, whether they're excited yelling or, whatever, they're just having fun and they're, really energy. And so that is, we know that masks are both a protector for the individual wearing them as well as the person that you are close to on the other end. So I would like to hear some input from maybe Mr. Narducci about what the teachers thought was practical with the 3 feet issue outside, if that's going to be, possible to make that happen.
Sure, and due to the nature of children, right, they want to be around each other, and that's no different in classrooms or on playgrounds. But when we tasked this to our 32 administrators who worked with their COVID teams at their sites, it was overwhelmingly that they felt that at recess that mask break could occur, and that our students are predominantly probably not wearing masks correctly outside anyway. So we also see limited spread in those areas from lunchroom on, because our lunchrooms are the majority of them are still distanced at the 6 feet, because we continue to keep that cohort the way we started. But with the playgrounds, it was overwhelmingly that they are able to work with it. And then we're also looking at a duration of time. If a student is with another student for the 15 minutes or more within a 24-hour period, these exchanges usually don't occur at the same time. They're running around. They have multiple groups. They're going to different pieces of the playground. But we still have the supervision there that we put into the beginning of the year. So we do have supervisors working with kids just to remind them as well. For the most part, I have to say too, Ms. Berger, that our elementary kids are pretty. They've been following rules. It's just they get tired, and there's a bit of you go back to what you knew or you know, and so we just have to constantly remind them of what the practice is. But for the most part, they follow that.
I just have one more question to clarify. When we say recess, of course, junior high and high school students do not have recess. So I'm assuming this is applying from pre-K to sixth graders only.
For Mr. Worth's discussion, or for one of the strategies that you're talking about as a group?
I guess my question is to the whole group about we're currently discussing recess, right? Not.
I think we're discussing when students are outdoors, whether
away from the classroom.
Okay, so if that's the case, then I have more concerns when it comes to the junior high and high school levels with passing periods because of the design of Arizona schools, where you go outside oftentimes to get to your next class. And anyone who's spent any time in a junior high or high school knows how crammed that can be, where you're like within 1 foot 2 feet of the person in front of you or coming at you from the other direction. On these really tight outdoor staircases and the walkways between buildings. And then how is that going to get monitored? And then what is the issue for the teachers when students are allowed to take their masks off and then they come back in the room with it off, right? And then that just becomes like another whole classroom management issue for the junior high and high school. So I do have concerns about it just being a blanket anytime you're outdoors for that reason, for the higher grades.
Is Dr. Gilbert nearby, or would he like to come? Is he?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Dr. Gilbert, your microphone is muted.
Yes, I am here.
Could you comment?
In regards to being outside, for activities that are happening outside, we're already mitigating activities now as it relates to athletics. But when you're talking about students moving from class to class, that would be something that the schools would have to look at how they could mitigate in the sense of distance. They are trying to do that now in the sense of some of the things that they've already done with, for example, reducing the amount of travel during the day, which is why we went to the block, at least at this particular time, as well as having multiple lunches so that you have less students traveling at the same time. So we've already been working on mitigating the number of students, but you still have, with our large schools, large numbers of students still moving from class to class. So it would have to be looked at how they could mitigate any of that travel.
I have a question on the 7 through 12.
There would be direct teacher supervision in the PE class, and especially with the hotter temperatures that we're seeing and the distance that kids are, apart. The biggest issue, I think, might come when they all head back into the locker rooms to change out of PE uniforms or whatever, where are they going to keep their masks while they're, do they have pockets in their uniforms and that type of thing. I'm sure that the administration and the PE teachers can figure that out, but it's something to consider. So, are there, Mr. Olive, or did you, or does anybody, Mrs. Bruner, Ms. Love, Mr. Oliver, Mr. Worth, do you have any other comments, concerns as to your thoughts on our direction at this point?
I have a motion I would like to start, if that's okay with you guys.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Madam President, I would like to make a motion to modify our current mask policy beginning Monday, April 26th, to require masks indoors and allow mask wearing optional when outdoors at recess for pre-K through 6th grades, and for 7th through 12th grades when in supervised PE classes outside. Effective May 31st, if the CUSD infection rate remains low, masks would become optional moving forward, beginning with summer school. And I would like to recommend that the superintendent have the authority to make adjustments to our mask policy if the superintendent sees fit.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, why don't we, I guess, discuss at this point? Comments, discussion?
Madam President, I'd like to
Yes, sir.
suggest, that, for lack of a better word, a friendly amendment that allows the elementary to be optional.
Oh, I said optional.
Oh, you did? I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
missed that.
it all meant
No.
I thought it was optional outdoors.
Optional.
yes, outdoors.
Are you talking about optional indoors, Joel?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable with it being optional outdoors.
At the elementary level, based on the minimal risk that and then those parents that are concerned can wear a mask.
I'm uncomfortable with it being optional indoors for our younger kids. I think that masks need to be required indoors, and I'm okay with the outdoor issues that we're talking about. I'm not 100% comfortable with it, but I can learn to be comfortable with it. But I do think that masks need to be required indoors. Our littles, they're not in a place where they can get a vaccine. And, despite what people think, COVID is still new. We still have a new variant, and children are getting it. And the scary thing is we don't know which children are. And I would feel horrible if it was one of our kids.
Ms. Love, I agree with you about the fact that, there isn't a vaccine available for children under the age of 16 at this point. And when you look at just our county and our state data, children under the age of 20, which is a children's category that is identified every day in the demographics and the number of cases, they actually have the second highest number of cases of all the age groups. And this is a concern. I don't think that, and as I say, I still do have concerns that although we know they're not super spreaders, but they can catch it, they can transmit it. But I think that, I agree with you, Ms. Love, that, there is no vaccine for them, and there is no other place for them in our district, or even other places, perhaps, that would be requiring masks indoors.
Madam President, point of order. So that since it was proposed that that's a friendly amendment, is that Mr. Olive would decide whether to accept that or not before we?
No.
Okay. So now we're talking about the original proposal.
The original proposal. And one other thing I'd like to point out is there are 24 days left, and actually after Monday, there's going to be 22 days left. It's been a year and change, and we're so close, and the vaccines are taking effect, and they're making a difference, but it's almost there. If everybody can have a little bit more patience, I think we're going to be good after the summer.
Jason, that's one of the things I totally agree with you on, that goodness sakes, we've gone for this for a year, so let's don't bail at the last few weeks.
So back to the first suggestion, I do have an issue with the summer school. I don't know what our numbers are going to look like then, and I don't know what the CDC recommendation is going to be, nor the Arizona Department of Health. And so I really don't feel comfortable projecting out. If we want to create something with triggers where if the CDC and the Arizona Department of Health decide that masks are no longer necessary in schools, maybe that's an option, to change that and set it up that way. But just to set a deadline for things when we don't know what's going to happen with numbers or with recommendations, I don't feel comfortable with that.
So we have another few weeks before summer school starts, and my proposal gives the superintendent the option of changing the mask requirements as needed. So if we run into a really big unexpected spike, I would expect the superintendent should change the mask requirements, but I don't anticipate that, but that's the.
I would like to amend it to where it doesn't just go to the superintendent, but it comes to the board. I'm not really comfortable in making decisions based on like future. I'm okay with making those decisions right now. Barb was able to provide some facts for right now and where we're headed. But I'm not comfortable with, I agree with Laura that we need like a trigger. And I think it probably needs to come to the superintendent. The other thing that I would like to add is that for PE for secondary, if they're doing PE inside, are we saying that that's maskless PE, or are we requiring them to have PE inside with masks? And if they do something outside, then it's optional.
My proposal was PE outside would be optional. PE inside I did not say anything about, so that would still have masks.
Okay, so I think that we probably just need to clarify that and put that in the amendment. Any activities that are taking place inside, but I'm okay with the what was proposed. I'm just not okay or comfortable with the summer school May 31st, because I think we probably need to review that then based off of the data then.
Dr. Castile, do we have any idea, or Mr. Narducci, do we have any idea as to how summer school is going to be operated? Are there classroom sizes that are limited? Are there, what is I guess what does summer school look like? Obviously, it doesn't look like regular classes.
Sure, Madam President, members of the board. Dr. Jessica Edgar has been working on our summer school programs for quite a few months now. And so it's focused on learning loss. So we are inviting students where we've looked through data to see that we have objective data that shows that there has been learning loss, and then and that's open right now. Our class sizes will be 20 to 1 or less. Again, an opportunity to employ all the other mitigation strategies that are in place. And again, with those mitigation strategies, we've seen a very low spread at this point. And so that's even more tailored to the fact that we'd have all of our summer school programs at 20 to 1 or less. We do know summer programs, everybody has a great intent to attend, but they get attrition by the end of the program. So it could be anywhere between 14, I'm going to say, to 20 students. And we've got various sites. We have 5 different elementary schools that will host our summer learning loss programming as well. But we will be employing all the mitigation strategies. If the board has decided that masks were optional, that might give us at least some grounds to look at as we go back into the school year. And also, Madam President, I'd like the outdoor activity, just reminder, when elementary PE is outside, they are social distance, and that would be another area that kids are actively involved. So I'd like that to be considered with, if I could state that, since I'm closest to elementary, that our PE in elementary is probably a little easier to mitigate since it's a classroom coming out, and our PE teachers have done a great job of making sure they have activities that address that.
And Mr. Narducci, a follow-up question on the summer school. Are those students typically all together in one class and they don't mix with others? Are there cohorts typically, or are they rotating between, let's say, language arts and mathematics or something like that during their time for the learning loss classes?
At elementary, we'll have an online version for some students, and then the in-person will be cohorted, and they're typically in one classroom, and they'll be involved in their learning within that one group. They'll actually be assigned based on some strategies that we're trying to catch up on. We're being very intentional about the targeted strategies for instruction, so that we can gain some ground with the specific areas. So we have targets for every student, individualized, in the areas of math and language arts and science.
Okay.
They're cohorted and they're in their same group.
Yeah.
And I believe in the high school level, they are in class pretty much all morning for one class. And then if they choose to do two classes, there's a second class in the afternoon. For, I think it's like 4 hours or something, right? For summer school.
Well, what's changed this year, and including with what's happening at elementary, the focus this year is on learning loss. So we're utilizing some of our online programming so that we can make sure that we are focused on that particular learning loss. If they're looking to accelerate, they would utilize our Chandler Online Academy. So they would be online, similar to last summer. We had over 4,000 students in online last year. But as it relates to learning loss, our in-person will be at Willis Junior High and at Chandler High School, and they'll be utilizing computer labs, as well as the teachers that are running summer school will be doing some direct instruction. So you're going to have a combination of students being able to be in person and online, because we know that with summer school, one day of summer school covers a lot of content. So when we have students that are unable to make it, unfortunately, we end up having to drop them because they've missed so much. So we wanted to focus and make sure that we have connectivity for students to be able to be at home and not just have to come in. So there's options for families of either working from home, working with the teacher, or working in person. So you're still looking at a computer lab, having it so that you can still mitigate and use mitigation strategies and keeping distance between students, because we're utilizing the whole school, as well as being able to work with students that aren't going to be on site as a whole. So there will be mitigation strategies as well.
I also wanted to point out that with Mr. Olive, with your motion, you had mentioned about Dr. Castile being able to adjust if things kind of got a lot of higher cases and things like that with the masks. We have already, in our resolution back quite a number of months ago, Dr. Castile did have the authority, and she said that she was going to be coming back to the board if there were changes within the mask, policy and mitigation strategies, and she would come to the board and talk to us about this. Thus, tonight's meeting also, and I feel as though she has shown us that trust and has come to us to find out what the board feels about this potential change. And I, due to the fact of the governor's order and rescinding of the mask mandate for schools, and I feel as though if we if we do have this and say the 31st of May, we would make them optional, or actually June 1st, I guess, because the 31st I think is Memorial Day. That it would allow masks to be optional in summer school. If things really go bad or get much better, I'm sure that she's going to talk to us about that. And so I feel confident that if things really change, that we would be involved in those decisions as a board. And so I'm comfortable personally with the motion as it is. That Mr. Olive has presented.
Then Dr. Narducci, you'd be the same way with that?
Yes, I'm sure he would be. We'll make sure he is. But that's June 1st, and he hasn't taken over by that time. So, well, at this point, I think, is there any other discussion or comments? Okay, so I guess we'll call for a vote on this, and I guess I'll go through. I think it might be difficult unless we have a couple of people with masks. So,
Mr. Olive, can you repeat your motion just to make sure I've got it straight?
All right. So I said, Madam President, I would like to make a motion to modify our current mask policy beginning Monday, April 26th, to require masks indoors and allow mask wearing optionally when outdoors for pre-K through 6th grades and for 7th through 12th grades when in supervised PE classes outside. Inside PE classes for 7th through 12th grades would remain wearing masks indoors. Effective May 31st, if CUSD infection rates remain low, masks would become optional for moving forward, beginning with summer school. Finally, I recommend the superintendent have the authority to make adjustments as needed. And that was the original.
Okay, so I guess my only question that I feel like is an issue for me at least is what does remain low mean? Because right now we're in the substantial range, so remain implies that we're currently in a minimal risk, and that's not where we're at. So could you give me a little more clarification on that?
I would think that means if we have a spike, we could all come back and have another meeting and change everything again.
Okay, if we're all ready at this point, I would like to go ahead and call for the vote. I will start with Mrs. Bruner, since you're on my screen to the left. Mrs. Bruner.
As I said before, I have concerns with the summer school piece. Otherwise, I'm in support, so I have to vote no because that one piece is in there. Thank you.
Ms. Love?
I'm also going to vote no, just because I really don't feel like I'm uncomfortable with setting anything for the future, and I'm uncomfortable with that summer school piece. So it's a no for me, but I do support it otherwise.
Thank you. Mr. Olive?
Yes.
Mr. Worth? You'll need to turn your microphone off of mute. Thank you.
My greatest fear, the situation I'm in right now. If necessary, I'll come back later and vote yes, but for now, no.
And I will vote yes. So the motion does not carry. Mr.
So what
Olive?
I'd like to suggest, Barb, let me think out loud. Obviously, I'd like to consider the elementary. Maybe there's some optional, if there's some restrictions we can put in there to make that safer. If that's absolutely unacceptable to those that voted yes, then I'd probably go back to the original motion and ask for a vote on that.
Mr. Worth, I really believe that our elementary students should also be in masks. They have adapted well. It is part of our mitigation strategy that has been extremely successful, and I tend to agree with the fact that, why this has been successful. We have 24 more school days left. Let's finish this out. I would not support having the elementary pre-K, those things, masks at this point.
So based on that, if you want to go back to the original motion, we can reconsider it.
Madam President, I would like for us to re-entertain the original motion.
Is there a second?
Yes. Second.
Okay. I guess we will revote. Can we go through quickly? Mrs. Bruner?
No.
Ms. Love?
No.
Mr. Olive?
Yes.
Mr. Worth?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So the motion carries. We will direct the administration to go ahead and begin to disseminate the information to our families as to what will be, and to our schools. And Dr. Castillo and Mr. Narducci, I assume that if we start seeing any increases in cases as summer school approaches, that you will again bring this to the board. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. With that said then, I don't have a gavel. This meeting is adjourned, and we will see you next week for our regularly scheduled board meeting. Thank you everyone for coming, and I'm sorry that we ran a little bit late, Mrs. Bruner and Ms. Love. Sorry.
No worries.
You had appointments for this evening, so I do apologize. And thank you everyone.